It's Hollie's Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero in the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where unfortunately it's another therapy session because we've got to dissect obviously losing to Fulham 2-0 at the weekend. But to do so, I am joined by three fabulous guests because it's going to be an interesting therapy session to say the least. So first of all, I'm joined by Jim from Oh So Spurs. Jim, how are you, my friend?
I am surviving, thanks, Holly. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, getting there. It's not good fun after a Spurs loss. But it's great to have you on the show, Jim. Also joined by the amazing Billie T. Billie, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How many times do you reckon I've been on the show this season? Like 5, 6, 7? I've never been on after a win. Why do you always get to be on after a loss?
Sorry, man.
Is it just because we lose every week now? Is that the problem?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not premeditated. I don't do it to you every week.
You do ask me before the weekend, to be fair. So.
There we go. It's not my fault this time. But no, it's great to have you on, Billie. And
You too,
also
thank you.
joined by Jonny making his debut on the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm all good. And like Billie, I was actually hoping to come on and, after a win, such a rarity. I think I've had one recently where I've actually gone on and we've won. But hey, it is what it is.
After Southampton, everyone's going to be wanting to go on after Southampton.
Yeah.
Right? That's probably
Yeah, everybody's queuing up out the door for that
we'll
one.
keep a clean sheet, no doubt. Yeah.
But no, it's like I say, it's definitely after a loss. It's great to chat out. So I'm privileged to have you guys on with me tonight. Obviously, this show is sponsored by the Tabletop. If you like me and a massive nerd and you want to get your Pokemon or board games, go check them out. I think I'll put the description in the link. If I haven't, I will do it at the end of the show. But without further ado, let's dive into this because Jim, it's the 15th loss of the season, and it's no lie, our season this year in terms of the Premier League has been a bit woeful, hasn't it? Oh, Jim,
Yeah,
you're on mute.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, sorry, on mute. The reason I was on mute there is because my son's having a bath in a room one door down, so you might hear him scream with joy, hopefully. But yeah, it definitely has been really tough. Like you can't expect any fan to be smiling when are we 15th now? Did you say? I just have it in my head with 14th. I just have my head with constantly stuck in 14th. It helps me kind of cope. But yeah, look, I can't expect any fans to be grinning and trying to dig out small positives like I maybe overly search for at times. But yeah, it's been tough. But there has been the green shoots of some of these young players, which I guess we'll probably touch on later, which does leave me with some excitement and optimism for the future. And we are still in the Europa League. And for me, something about the European trophies and Tottenham, like that's our thing. It's something Arsenal seem to really struggle to make a part of their history, and it's something we've done really well historically to make a part of ours. And I'm hoping and praying that this year is one of those we add to that years of memories in Europe.
100%, because obviously, Billie, like Jim's kind of alluded to, that is kind of done or dusted, isn't it, with the Premier League? The Europa League is kind of thing we're all pinning our hopes on.
Oh yeah, I think as soon as we strung enough wins together to be out of the relegation fight, which is a crazy concept in itself when you think about it. Really, the league was over. Like we can't really break into the top 10 anymore. There was I think we beat. I can't remember who. I think we beat Ipswich, and there was some talk of the Conference League might go down to 9th again this season. We might be able to push for Europe, but I don't think that was ever really on the cards. Like it's been so woeful in the league. And all season I've said I would happily trade the league for the Europa League all day, but my worry is the league has got so bad that I've just lost all hope in that as well. So I was definitely in a position where I'll happily rotate players, rest players for the Europa League, but it's just been so miserable that I think actually sometimes perhaps losing breeds losing, and I think fans and players will be going into that Frankfurt tie now with a little bit of trepidation, thinking, Jesus, this is not going to be easy, but hopefully we'll be up for it because, I don't think it's like, as I've said before, I don't think it's like all or nothing in the Europa League and the fact that, it's a good gamble. I think it's like having your last £5 note and put it on a number in roulette. It's a crapshoot, as they call it in gambling terms. Like we're throwing everything onto like a really long odds bet. But I'm a gambler as well, so let's do it.
I think that's the thing, because obviously I didn't really have high hopes for the Fulham game, Jonny, if I'm being brutally honest. I think for me, to see us win in that game on Thursday, I was kind of like, oh, it's fine. I mean, I'm not going into this too positively. But, Jonny, the performance we kind of had where I know we'll get into a bit more detail later on, but the second half, we seemed to be on top, seemed to have scored a goal, and then boom, Fulham managed to score down the other end, and I just lost all hope by that point.
We had 15 minutes in that second half. It was played out right in front of me. I moved in the second half, but I didn't really have that much confidence, I've got to be honest with you. There was a moment which I thought personally was a penalty where Bergvall could see that there was nothing going on. He picked up the ball, drove into the box, and Calvin Bassey, stuck his leg out, and I thought for sure it was a penalty. I put my hand up, Bergvall put his hand up, but such is the team at the moment. No one else did. No one supported it, even if they didn't think it was. No one joined in. But interesting thing, actually, when I last went to Fulham, we lost 3-0. And I went yesterday and we lost 2-0. And in between those two games, every single game that Fulham have played, I mean, every game, not once have they kept a clean sheet. But somehow they managed it. I mean, look, we're going to keep on the positive. We've been trying to find a positive. We're only 11 points off a ninth, which, you could put it like that. But listen, for me, there was something fundamentally wrong yesterday. Before we kicked off, I saw the group of 7 that had been dropped. And it reminded me of the kids' playground, where the kids are kicking the ball about and they're all having lots of fun. But it didn't seem at all serious. It didn't seem like they gave 2 hoots. And not that, I'm against camaraderie and everything, but it seemed so lackadaisical. It seemed like they were on holiday on the beach. And I made a comment about it. And I was thinking, I'd like to see what happens, because in my head, at that point, I thought, well, Ange just switched it around. I can see us making the impact with our subs in the second half. Alas, it didn't happen. And some of those players that came on showed some of the relaxed nature that they showed pre-game.
I think you're spot on there, Jonny. I think the most frustrating thing for me, and coming to you, Jim, is the fact that obviously we saw some of those players drop that I thought had a brilliant game in Europa. And don't get me wrong, I was here for resting players. But when you think after this game against Fulham, we've got 18 days rest. It was a bit bizarre to see the likes of Maddison. We had that midfield kind of put on that team sheet, and there was no Maddison there to create anything. And then also you think to yourself, Odebert's just scored a brace. How is he not starting? What did you kind of make of obviously that starting lineup as well?
Yeah, Maddison, I agree. I was a bit like, I get Ange made some points about it before, didn't he? That he feels Maddison's performances have improved, and it's partly associated to him basically being rotated, is what he was saying, in other words. But I would have still thought, with that break coming up, let's start Maddison, because that midfield lacked a lot of creativity. When I look at the Odegaard one, I can understand it, because I'm thinking, yes, he's got a break afterwards, but he still would have been starting 3 times in 7 days, and he's come back with a 5-month injury from a bad hamstring. And that's the kind of decision Ange would have made in the early seasons, where he would have started him. And I could just imagine the hamstring popping and everyone going, what a plonker, why risk it for a game with nothing to play for? You've got a £60 million Matisse Tell on the bench, play him. So that one I understood completely. Berryval, somewhere in between with, because he was remind me, I think it was an injury time of the Europa League game. He was having his leg stretched, and I thought, oh no, not another hammy. So I thought maybe that's why it was managing his minutes. But the Maddison one, yeah, I was surprised not to see him start. But the worrying one for me was, and it's less down to manager choices, this one, but Van de Ven not getting any minutes at all. I thought that was just such a, whether that's the manager's fault or not, it's down to your opinion, but I feel like we are so reliant on him in that back line for the way he plays out the back, and it allows us to play out so quickly. And what concerned me was he didn't come on at all. Now I'm hoping that's not because he's not fit enough, but at the same time, you wouldn't have him on the bench if he's fit enough. He wouldn't be on the bench. Surely he's fit enough to play at least 30 minutes, or you don't put him on the bench, you'd assume. But if he's just there filling numbers, then yeah. But the Van de Ven one's a bit more complex. I don't really understand the complexity of that issue. But yeah, I didn't think the lineup was too bad. I think it was more to Johnny's point in the first half. It was application from some of the players that made me frustrated. And I know Basuma has been highlighted as the one on this one, but I think there was 2 or 3 that I just would have liked to see a bit more kind of, because they're fighting for Ange after the game. I'd like to see them fight for him during the game a bit more in the certain ones, but that's just me there, yeah.
I think that kind of hits the nail on the head because Billy, I'm kind of in the same boat in terms of we're seeing players come out and say the same things week in, week out after these defeats, after these poor performances. I don't really see the action on the pitch if they generally are playing for the manager because I don't see it.
No, it is a bit of a strange one. And, I can totally get behind the concept of rotating players and particularly players that played on Thursday night. But, I think this squad, like the depth that we have is a lot better than it's been in the last few years. It's certainly not where we need it to be to compete for the top honours, but it's definitely, we have a much deeper squad than we've had for quite a time under Daniel Levy. And if you're rotating players like that, the second string players, like the players that are out there, people like Basuma, Bentancur, Johnson is a £50 million player. Taylor's also a £50 million player. We should be seeing more of them. There's no doubt. We should be seeing more from them. Sorry, there's no doubt about it. And he doesn't seem to be able to inspire or work with this whole squad. When we've got the first 11 playing and we're under the lights and the crowd are up, yeah, we can look great on a Thursday night. But where is a sort of, I don't know. There's just been so many flat performances from the rotated second string recently that I don't know what's going on, and it's just frustrating to see as a fan. And if I think all fans really want to see is their team fighting and competing in duels and things like that. And there's just been so many games this season where we've been just incredibly flat. And I think that first half against Fulham is as flat as I've seen us, since the Alkmaar game, which wasn't that long ago. But, there's been a string of flat performances, I would say. So you'd have to question, is he motivating these players at the moment? I'm sure we'll delve into a bit more about Ange later, and everyone knows I've been a huge fan of his over the course of his time here. But he seems more interested in taking on fans at the moment than inspiring his own players. So it's a bit worrying for me. There are definitely signs where it looks like it's almost certainly coming to an end for everyone. In terms of Ange.
I'm glad you kind of mentioned. I mean, we might as well bring up the elephant in the room right now, anyway, and that is obviously Ange, because it's true what you said, Billy. In terms of, it does seem like he's putting a lot of energy into having confrontations with the fans, and as much as I can see potentially the frustration, because sorry, go on, Billy.
And I wonder if that's kind of like when you start doing it as a one-off incident, everyone can sort of write it off as Ange was just angry, but it's happening almost every away game at the moment, and there's little barbs in the press and things. It doesn't inspire me with any sort of confidence that he's going to be here long term, because these fan incidents, I'm sure Johnny, you were there in the way, and you can talk more on it, but. Yeah, it's just becoming worryingly frequent, and it's sort of like the action of someone who sort of knows they're maybe not going to be here next season, to me anyway.
No, and I think that's the thing, John, because obviously you were there, and obviously from like a Twitter perspective, you don't necessarily see what exactly is going on. And obviously there was an incident where Tell went into the away section, and we'll get on to him in a minute, but obviously that other jipe where Ange kind of, as he was walking into the Fulham tunnel, then having a jipe at another fan. What's your kind of take on how you see things at the moment?
I think it's quite ironic that the guy last in the room is the guy defending him the most. Look, he's crossed the line, Hollie, as far as I'm concerned. I'm used to Spurs losing. I've been going to Spurs longer than I can remember. It's part and parcel of being a Spurs fan, losing. I can accept it when we go down with a fight. But as Billy mentioned before, I do not believe in any shape, way or form that this squad is as bad to be in the position it is right now. It's as simple as that. And, when I look at someone like Pochettino, who always gets brought up, he said he needed to change the furniture because of his frustration. He was fed up. He needed to voice it. Obviously, didn't go down well in the dressing room. But he got rewarded by Steve Hitchin with Jack Clark and Dombele, Sessegnon and Lo Celso, who hardly made a contribution over 5 years, let alone, in the time he was here. And yet this Ange has had support. He's had the backing, more backing than I know other managers have had. there's an argument to be said, oh, but he's got kids. Come on, he got Vicario, he got Mickey van der Ven, he got Maddison. I could go on. We all know the players that have been bought in. He got rid of his Deadwood. I don't see a manager that's inspiring that team. When you look at someone like Harry Redknapp, for example, he's a man manager. But what used to happen when we came out for games under him and under Poch, we used to come out fired up. Big games, and the players have just been so flat, game after game after game. And I've heard all the blame game. It's the injuries, it's the kids. We had schoolboys out there. It was the pitch. It was this. It was the fans. It's the press. I don't want to hear it. Okay, if it's not bothering you, when he's sitting there and telling everyone he's not bothered about what's being said because he'll get another job and Mr. Hindsight and all the rest of it. And what happens? One fan shows his displeasure and you react like that. Be the bigger man, walk past it. Don't rise to the bait. And don't pick out the fans. You did it again after Man City. You've done it at various games throughout this season. And I quite honestly have had enough of it. I was one of the fans who said, after that 10 games and we had those injuries, in the January, wait till we get our players back. Wait and see. You'll see the real Spurs. And then I realised when the players started to slowly come back, there wasn't enough alternative. And I realised this system wasn't going to be for me. And let's be honest, since that November the 5th, we've had 35 defeats. And we've still got 11 games to go. Now, people wanted to take up a segment and say, we've had the injuries. Yes, we've had injuries. And I understand that. And, anyone losing these players, it would affect. But come on, that's one part of the story. There's a bigger story here. And 35 defeats is not down to injury. It's down to your mismanagement, okay? I don't blame him. I blame Daniel Levy. I blame Scott Munn. Why? Because after Conte went, they spent 4 months searching for a manager. And no disrespect to Ange Postecoglou, I didn't think he was good enough then. He wasn't in, I had a list of 5. I won't bore you with those. But when he came, I thought, you know what? I don't know everything. I'm going to have to go with it. But now it's just shown exactly what it is. I'm so angry and frustrated with it all now. I'm quite calm for me, believe me, right now. I think if I'd have been on last night, honestly.
I don't blame you, John. I think what you're kind of alluding to as well is the fact that, like you said, it is kind of getting to a head now. And I think after you reel off all the losses we've kind of had, and Jim, for me, it seems every game, like Johnny has said, starts the same. And it started the same against Fulham in terms of players just don't really seem up for it. And I'm probably going to be devil's advocate here, but it sounds ridiculous for me to say this. But do you think they have all put their eggs into one basket for Europa, and it's almost like the Prem doesn't matter now because we can't really climb any higher up the league?
And just to kind of touch on there's 2 bits, because there's kind of the 2-part question, like Ange snapping at the fans and stuff. And firstly, I do agree in the sense that, I'm not agreeing him snapping at the fans. What I'm saying is I do agree that the concept that in football, abuse from a fan in the stands is just part of the parcel, and the best thing to do is to walk away from it. But I guess I do think he cares about trying to make this work, which is partly why he's getting so angry, because he's found himself back against the wall and he's looking for any opportunity to find some kind of extra support on that journey. And he's turned to the away fans in the wrong way. That has effectively ended up creating a bit of a rift with the away fans. And I think what that's now resulted to is away fans who go to games. I'm a season ticket holder at home, but I don't go away. Like Johnny, have probably gotten to a point where, and Johnny, so I'm speaking on behalf here, where you're thinking, you're not one of us in this situation. You don't get us on your side by telling us we're part of the problem, right? You get us on side by kind of acknowledging and going, I appreciate you must be really frustrated. I'm trying to fix this. Like, please help me through this journey. You don't get there from kind of biting back and saying what. Anyway, so that's my kind of stance on that. Equally, I do think we are a difficult fan base to please overall. Our expectations are in line with what we were under a different era to what we are now. I know we've been
better than 14th though, Jim.
Yeah, but I think our expectations are firmly in that top 6 club realm, and obviously right now we're not there, so it makes it hard for fans to be patient with it. But the other part of the question is, are the players kind of still fighting for him in that slow starts to games? I think there's 2 parts that I do think they want to win the league games. I think these are professionals. They have win bonuses associated to it. So there's still a monetary incentive. There's not as much
not
of an incentive.
much, are they, Jim?
No, but there's not as much incentive, of course. And I think with the international break around the corner, we've looked at certain players and thought, are you protecting yourselves for those big international moments that are more important to you than Tottenham? Kind of get that. But I do think that the lack of energy is partly stemmed from us actually not. When we went into the season, for example, I thought we had a squad that was, I think Billy was saying earlier, was actually pretty deep compared to what we've had in previous seasons. In captain hindsight mode and reflection, I'm going, I can't believe we went into a season with a left back in Ben Davies, Archie Gray, and Dragusin. And Dragusin's he was a poor signing in the sense he doesn't fit the system at all. So we spent a lot of money on a backup centre-back who doesn't really work in the system, and exposed Ange and made his life more difficult, spending all that money on him. So we went in as our defensive options with 2 very injury-prone players ahead of them. And then I think we then went further in the domestic cups than we typically normally do. And we're still in Europe. So it went 3-day cycle continuously for like 3 or 4 months. And then the burnout has just gone deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, to the point where some players, I think, have got on their own heads behind the idea of, we've almost got a bit of a pass at the moment. And when all my teammates come back, things will pick up again and it will be okay. And Ange is there. So I don't know how you do it as manager. I guess someone would say it's his job. But motivating players for a game when there's not anything really materialistic to play for, when they've got to play for their country the next week and they're still in a cup, I think is quite a difficult one to do, because their jobs aren't on the line like the managers. So they're going to care more. And some players, I think, are definitely more behind Ange than others. I think some are really fighting for him. But I actually think ones, even like Kulusevski, who puts his heart and soul into every game, he made a few kind of creaky comments that insinuated he was being overworked. Whereas others, I think, fight tooth and nail for him in Berryval, Gray, Spence, Tell, because he's giving them the opportunities they didn't get before. So they're like, this guy is helping me build my career. I'm all in on this guy. The longer he is here, the more opportunity I'm going to get, and that's better for me.
I think that's spot on, because obviously, like we say, we've seen Berval's been a monster. We've seen the likes of Archie Gray has basically backpacked the whole of Spurs at certain times this season. And again, like you said, Ange is the man that's kind of brought him into that kind of setup. But then when you've got your senior players like Decky, who this year has exploded, again, you're kind of sat there thinking, where on earth do we kind of go from there? And it is just a really depressing time at the moment where we don't seem to be aligned with anything at the moment. And I never thought it would get this bad, but hey ho, here we are. But to kind of move on and dissect how the kind of game went, and obviously in that second half we were up for a little bit, and then boom, we see Munoz, Billie T managed to obviously get on the score sheet again, which was a frustrating kind of goal to concede in terms of Odobert kind of losing the ball, and then Munoz having acres of space to kind of do what he pleases in our own box.
Yeah, and I think it's an easy thing to do is to go and blame Odobert for that. But I think if you look more bigger picture, there's no outball for him at all. There's no one there that he could easily pass to. He's obviously frustrated with that fact. He's surrounded by Fulham players. And there's no outball for him, so I do sympathise with him a little bit. And then, one of our key features of this season is we're yet again a team attacking us with all the freedom of the world. We saw it in the last game against Bournemouth, the last Premier League game. Kirkes having the freedom of the left-hand side. We see it again in Fulham. And I think, I will keep saying it. I've defended Ange constantly throughout his tenure, but you just can't. Even his biggest fans, like, we are almost completely inept at defending. Like, we are not defensive, and I think that was fine when we were attacking really well and scoring shed loads of goals, but that seems to have been lost as well. So you can't. It's really difficult to accept the fact that we can't defend when we also can't attack. So yeah, it's just a really frustrating touchstone of the season and last season in particular as well. Is that we just don't have the capability to sort of have that real sort of defensive grit and that this and I know the space has come from the side of football that Ange likes to play, but it's just been frustrating when the space has caused so many of the goals that we concede. So, and I think Ange himself called it, and he says, there's been so many games this season where we've been 0-0 against a team we should be beating, and we go and concede a really soft goal. It happened against Bournemouth, happened against Fulham, and then the match turns on its head. So yeah, it's just another really soft goal to concede and a symptom of our, of this team over the last season, to be honest.
I think it's just kind of adding up. Like you say, it's not copy and paste because obviously it was slightly different, but it's copy and paste where we just can't defend, and it's just mental at points to kind of sit there and think, Jesus Christ, like what is going on? I mean, to kind of put things on its head, like you alluded to earlier, Jonny. I mean, the game could have changed slightly when we see Bergvall's kind of brought down in the Fulham box, but again. It's a weird one because you're thinking to yourself that if we scored that pen, it would be 1-1 and we could have gone on with a bit more momentum. But up until that point when that first goal went in for Fulham, I just was thinking to myself, where on earth are we going to score from?
Listen, I feel like it's eat, sleep, repeat, Hollie. I've been through this so many times. I've been saying the same thing for a year now, over a year, since beginning of February 2024. What is Ange ball? I saw a glimpse of it against AZ, that third goal. That third goal was Ange ball. Fabulous. But, I'm not going to sit there and watch and wait for a moment in time. For a football club, that has momentum and is behind the manager, those aren't isolated moments that come once in a blue moon. They're things that happen. Fantastic sweeping moves that they might not all end in a goal, but as Billy alluded to, where's the cohesion? Where's the rhythm with our attack? Teams have sussed us out long ago. Gary O'Neill went on Monday Night Soccer and said, here's the blueprint. This is how you beat Spurs. This is how you null them down. Look, James Maddison needs space, okay? When you watch him play at Leicester, he has that space in the middle of the park. With Spurs, with two inverted backs, they push in, and on top of that, the defending team, the opposition, instead of stop the overload, just pack out the middle of the park, and Maddison doesn't have that room to operate. So that's why you saw so often in early days where Maddison was having to drop so deep to pick the ball up off of off the back four. And he's not a deep line midfielder. He's the only one that can break those lines. We don't have another playmaker. And without him, take him away, we don't have anything. We're predictable. Just come down the flanks. And it's just not good enough. And I find it so frustrating. The space, game after game after game. Forget Bournemouth. Bournemouth should have been out of sight. Kepa's two madness goalkeeping moments cost them. But even against Fulham, I kept saying, why are we giving them the ball? Look how much space they have down the flank. Robinson, again and again and again. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, it didn't matter. And it was only because, they weren't finishing great, that or the quality wasn't superb, that we didn't, lose anything. I actually thought Romero in the first 45 actually played well, thankfully. But it's a complete and utter mess. And I, for one, I've had enough of it. I did say before, as much as I want Ange out, you can't sack him because we've got the cups. Now I've got to the stage where I think even a interim manager who maybe knows this club could maybe motivate this club and lift it and give us the bounce. Because the only games that matter, we only need to win 2 more games to get to the final. We only need to win 2 games and draw 2. Win against Eintracht, draw against Eintracht. Win against probably Lazio and draw to get to the final. And I just don't know if this manager has the tactical nous to do it. And does that mean that if he does manage to do it, does he really deserve to be given another year at Tottenham? I'm not sure. I worry that we'll go down the same route as Eric Ten Hag, where in the summer, listen, I will be delighted. I'll come up here and I will praise Ange if he wins it, right? No two ways about it, because I want to be there. Football is all about the memories of being there and winning. There's no memory of when we finished fourth. There's no memory of finishing third. It's looking back on moments when you actually win something. But what I worry about is should that happen and they give him a big budget and the same thing happens again, like someone's going to have to come in and pick up the pieces, a bit like Amarint's having to do at Man United now with a squad that's not fit for purpose.
It is an interesting dilemma because, like you said, we all want to win a trophy. That's the be all and end all, and
100%.
especially this season as well, as how diabolical it's been. And I think that kind of being said, I think if he does win a trophy, is he allowed to stay on? I would probably say
it's a game changer, Hollie, isn't it? Listen, let's be honest, right? You know, everything that happened when we look back in history, the fact that we were crap for an entire year will not matter, because all that will matter was we won the trophy, we're in the Champions League, and the whole outlook changes overnight.
And I think that's the big thing. And I think the only thing that I can kind of claw onto is the fact that potentially if we do win the Europa League, that he keeps his job, Jim, is the fact of, like you said earlier, with the likes of bringing in Berval, the likes of having Gray, and the likes of those players that he's kind of given their chance and they fully flourished under.
Yeah, so that is, and I agree much of what Johnny said. I think if he wins the Europa League, that's the kind of lifeline for another at least 6 months. And I think even I do think that some parts of our, us as supporters, we have been impatient in some areas, but in many areas we've also actually been quite patient. I think we've been quite patient to see if this can start clicking. And I think there is another way in which he survives another 6 months, and that is if we do come back from the international break and suddenly, you've got Chelsea away and Liverpool away, you put in at least good performances in there that give the fans going, okay, I can see things moving in the right direction. And then you go and win your last 3 or 4 games of the season and you make it to the semi-final of the Europa League as a minimum. I think then people go, okay, let's give this another 6 months. But so I think there's that there. And there's also, if you do look at, I don't think it's quite as binary as he's done everything badly. I think he's made mistakes and he gets some fair criticism in many areas. But one, like you touched on there, Hollie, was the young players. I've sort of seen a lot of kind of, justification, which I think is normal when you're frustrated at being 14th in the league. You warrant criticism. But he's often said he doesn't give players chances until he's forced to. But he did sanction the signings of Berval and Gray and make a big point about saying they can add value now, they can add value now. And then they got their chances and they have kicked on quite a lot. And Spence as well, there's a bit of a kind of myth, I think, that he wasn't given any. And I think, Johnny, you've got information that he didn't like him at first, but he's changed his tune on that for sure. They've got a good relationship now. But he did actually start Spence, I think, in nearly every pre-season's game for the first 3 league games of the season. He then rested him on the 4th, and then he played him on the 5th game and he got injured. And he came back from injury. He had 1 game out, came back in for 3 or 4 games, and then he got injured again. So I think there was always some kind of, must have been a moment where Spence, he thought, actually, you proved me wrong. Let's give you a shot. So I do think he deserves some credit for these younger players who have obviously a high ceiling, and a lot of managers would get more out of players of high ceilings. But I think he has done, Berval and Gray in particular, and Spence have reached ceilings none of us probably expected them to hit so quickly in this amount of time. And I think we've got to go credit where it's due on that. Those were good. But on the flip side, I think Johnson, as an example, is someone where we made a mistake and he was handpicked and he was a chosen one for Ange. He said, I need him, first guy in kind of thing. And I think that money could have been better spent, and it would have made his life a lot easier if we'd gotten that first signing right on a more impactful winger that fits the system, which feels crazy to say when he scored 15 goals. But, we do know that he's even getting hauled off at half time now, which to me shows and just reached a point with him where it's utter frustration. But yeah, I do think he deserves credit for some players improving. And Vicario as well is another one that I feel if you look back 6 months, watch a video of Vicario, I think you'd say he's improved significantly. Like then every corner was a heart in your mouth moment. Now it feels like he commands the area and he's not scared to play out the back, and he gets more right than he does wrong playing out the back now. Whereas at the start, I feel like he got more wrong than he did right. So I think those are areas I would give him some credit for.
Yeah, it used to be squeaky bum time with us playing that, and it is at times still. There is some slight improvement kind of with Vicario. But obviously, we've just praised Spence, Billie T, and it would be wrong for me to kind of say he had an awful game at the weekend, because he didn't. It was just that blip moment in lack of concentration. Obviously, when the ball was pinged over the top, he was in no man's land, and then Davies couldn't deal with it. And the one person that bloody scores is Ryan Sessegnon, which kind of summed up the game, didn't it?
Is that to me? Or to Johnny?
Sorry, to Billy.
Billy, sorry.
Yeah. It doesn't just sum up the game; it sums up the entire club, really, doesn't it? It's just one of the most obvious thing that would ever happen to us, really. I just can't believe it. I think he played. I think I was reading today that he played 67 games for us and scored 3 goals. And then this is his first goal for Fulham as well since he's been back. It's just, it's the kind of typical thing that always happens to us. And again, it was just sort of lackluster defending again. I'm not going to criticise Spence for it, just because I think there's been plenty of games this season, especially in the last month or two, where the entire team has been really lackluster, and he's sort of been the only one driving the team, and he's put in excellent performances for a solid month or two now. So obviously a blip is normal. But yeah, it's just another bit of punctuation on our history that you sort of these moments always seem to fall that way for us. I was also really worried about Willian scoring against us, and he almost did a couple of times. So he looked pretty dangerous actually, and he must be about 35 by now, surely. But yeah, it's just one of those typical things.
Like it is, and like you summed it up, it's just basically Spurs at the moment. But Billy, I'll stick with you, because obviously from that kind of going on forward, we weren't going to return. And I think the biggest thing for me was the fact that we spoke about Davies before being a proper trooper for Tottenham, but to see him play that many minutes kind of yesterday was kind of a bit of a kicking in the teeth for me. What did you kind of think, obviously, with the whole goal in terms of him not being able to get rid of it sooner enough, but also the fact that we still had him on the pitch at this kind of time in the game?
As Jim said earlier, I'm a little bit confused about the Van de Ven thing. I am. And I'm wondering, there's either two things. Either the club are being massively cautious with his minutes because they're terrified of him snapping his hamstring, or there are maybe some long-term problems where he's already at, 23, 24, might be turning into like a Ledley King-like figure where he's going to have to play one game a week for the foreseeable or something. I don't know what's going on. I know they've hired someone, haven't they, to look at the way that he runs and things like that, and all sorts of things going on. I'm really concerned that Van de Ven is not getting any minutes in this game, despite having 18 days of rest now, because he's not been called up for Holland. This seems a bit baffling to me that he didn't come on. So yeah. And I think it's Davis' 350th game at the club, and I think he's been an excellent servant in terms of, he's always a very loyal player, very intelligent player. He's never kicked up a fuss about being a sort of a bench option. He's since he joined, he's been left back, left centre back, and he's a really, really good character to have around. But he's coming towards the end of his career now, without doubt, and it's concerning to see him still getting these minutes. I think I know plenty on Twitter criticise Ben Davies. I don't think he's a scapegoat. I just think he's exactly what he is, which is just a sort of good 5th, 6th choice now, a defender and a person who's had dedicated most of his career to Tottenham, and I'll always wish him well for that.
Definitely spot on. And I think that's the thing. The Mickey Van de Ven thing for me, Johnny, like the guys have already said, is stressing me out, because I bloody love Daddy Longlegs, and it does show that we do need him at times. But to think that obviously there was the first call where we pulled him back too early and then he got injured again. And now we're only seeing him now and again, especially when he's on the bench as well. You're thinking to myself, hang on a minute, there is definitely something up here.
Well, let's just say that I had a bet before the game that he doesn't play 1 minute. And they said, well, he's on the bench. I said, do you want to make a bet? I'll make a bet with you. He doesn't come on. There's smoke and mirrors, Hollie. Smoke and mirrors. What you're told is not always the truth. I'm not going to go into what I know about certain players who've been on the bench, who have no chance of playing, who didn't come on. Why they do that, I don't know, because psychologically, maybe. But, when you're a player, say, for example, like Mikey Moore, who, that's another story for another day, but I've been going on about this one for quite a number of weeks now. If you're not fit, don't be on the bench. If you're really not going to, do we need to, if we were playing Eintracht Frankfurt and you're trying to get a psychological edge, I can understand it. We're playing Fulham away. Okay. I didn't think it was going to come on. And Romero going off, you knew what was going to happen. And Ryan Sessegnon of all people. Listen, I've defended Jed Spence for a long time now. I'm probably closer to that one, not the most. The fact that he was told that he would, they wanted him to stay, and then he gets dropped from the Europa squad. And then he's told he could play in the Carabao Cups, and he doesn't start against Coventry. They put Archie Gray down at right back. And the only reason he got on was because Destiny got injured and he came on at half-time. Made a mistake, which led to their first goal, but recouped it and got the goal in the 87th minute to put them back in the tie, and then got dropped. I think, Archie Gray, Jed Spence, and Bergvall, or however you want to pronounce his name, are three natural talents that would have progressed on their own. That's my personal feeling. But I see a lot of regression in a lot of the players. I don't think that this system improves players. I think it exposes players. And I've seen too much regression in too many of the squad. Is Basuma really as bad as he's playing at the moment? Is Porro? You see, for me, before Porro even signed, when I was looking at his Y-Scout stuff, I said, he's not a defender, he's a winger. That was my opinion, right? I think this system, however bad he might have been, however many mistakes he might have made as a wing back under Conte, this system exposes even more. And I'd tell you what was more alarming for me was when Jed Spence against Ipswich flipped over to the right-hand side, and in that first 10, 15 minutes, he was exactly in the position that Porro normally is, and poor old Archie Gray was having to find Liam Delap with cross after cross after cross. The thing is, for someone like Spence, he's played right back. That's predominantly what he is. But when he was out in Genoa, he mainly played left back. And under Ange, he's played left back. I know people think that you can just switch back and play right back. I think you need 4 or 5 games to actually get back into the swing of it. And yesterday, for me, he did not look entirely comfortable in that game. And I think that definitely was highlighted in those 2 moments when I think he was partly responsible for both incidents with both those goals. And I'm his biggest supporter. But I think the system is flawed. And I don't see a way out of it personally.
No.
I hope I'm wrong.
Well, that's fair enough. And like you say, it is frustrating because Pedro Porro, for me, like you said, is brilliant going forward. Just coming back, he can't defend. And we're so exposed, especially when we've kind of got that midfield dynamic.
Right.
It just doesn't work. There's too much space. And for me, I know you've alluded to, Jonny, about Basuma, and I come to you, Jim, because I wanted to talk about him purely just because, like Jonny said, there's no way Basuma has, declined this massively from when he joined from Brighton, because it's just mental how he was at this kind of high peak and now he's slowly dipped off.
I think, like you just said there, when you said it's just mental, if I took that as a literal statement, I think it's the answer. It's a mental thing because we've seen how he can play in other moments in a Spurs shirt, right, and a Brighton shirt. I do think when we signed him, we got a bit too giddy because he played so well against Arsenal and he stood over one of their players laughing his head off, which instantly for me just won him massive kudos. And I loved him from day one. And he's just kind of got a bit of swagger about him on his day that I really kind of warmed to. But yeah, mentally this season he doesn't seem on it. And whether that's down to him lacking confidence because he's not confident in the system, whether that's down to him being less motivated because he's clearly not part of the plans beyond his contract expiry date in a year. It's probably, like most things in life, probably a bit of a mixture of the two that have kind of led to this time, and him also being kind of in and out of the side through team selection choices and injuries and various things that just never really let him get momentum in there, that have kind of led to this moment. But I don't think there's much of a way back for Basuma now, judging by Ange's recent comments. It sounds like he's out on the sidelines now. It's a tough one. I find we do fixate a lot, and this is, again, I don't know who's right or wrong in this argument. So I don't really want to take a side on this one with him, because behind the scenes and player personalities, none of us will ever meet these people. We don't know if they're hard workers, how they like to be motivated, if they're good people or nasty people, if they're coachable or not. We don't know. Like we don't know any of these people on that level, but we will hyperanalyze it to the nth degree to try get an answer, because we want to know, and we want answers. Often we want simple answers to complex problems, but often there are simple answers to simple problems in football that we're not addressing at the moment. But I think in this case, I think it's a complex one with Bissouma. I don't think the last 3 years have been easy for him. And I think it's just progressively got to a point where he's probably just looking at it and like, look, just kind of get me out of here. I need a fresh start somewhere else. And Ange's looking at it going, you're my only number 6. Go out there and play like this. And if he doesn't believe in the way and the system, he's just not going to put in good performances. So I think it's more Ange needs him more than Biss needs Ange right now. And that kind of maybe shows on the pitch, whereas other players need Ange more than he needs them. And those younger players are getting loads of opportunity and fighting tooth and nail for Ange as well. So I think it's a mix across the team, depending on which player you look at, really.
Like, spot on. Like you said, it's just, like you said, who you kind of analyse and who you put under the magnifying glass. But the Basuma decline at the moment has been poor. And like you said, it's probably best if kind of part ways, he gets a fresh start and we bring in someone kind of new. But obviously that kind of leads on. It was another loss. Another one's put on the table, or shall I say not put on the table. But it kind of moves us on because we've got 18 days rest now, which is a blessing in disguise. I'm very happy about that. I can detox for a little bit. But obviously when we come back, Billy, we have Chelsea, which is going to be fabulous, and then Southampton in the league, which again, I'm hoping that we do the number over Southampton, because my God, they are bad this season. But how do you kind of see those two fixtures going down?
Chelsea do not look convincing at the moment at all. And I think the fact that they're fourth just shows how poor this season has been overall. They're certainly not the teams that we've gone to the bridge and lost to some, Chelsea teams fighting for the title. They're not that kind of level to be worried about like that. But at the same time, our record there is so horrific that you'd have to. I think Chelsea beat Ange every time they played him, haven't they? From what I remember. I think he's lost all 3 times so far. So I'm not particularly confident going into it, but there's no reason to say, at our very best, we couldn't go there and give them a game. So yeah, it'd be an interesting one. I'm not particularly confident just because our away form is really, really poor. Our record against them is really, really poor. I think Southampton is just it's a no-brainer. We will win that game. I'm very, very happy to go on record and say that without any fear of backtrack on that. They are shocking and one of the worst Premier League teams ever. I'm sure we'll comfortably win that one, but it's the Chelsea one. And the thing is, right, if you're going through the kind of moments like we're going through now, and you need everyone to get back on board, or you need to give the fans something, a win at Chelsea would, that would be huge for the fans. It would be a bit of light in a misery of a season that we've gone and beat one of our biggest rivals away at the Bridge, a place where we very rarely win. Poch only managed it once, and he's the only person in my lifetime to do it. So yeah, that'd be great if we could beat them. I don't think they're certainly not firing on all cylinders at the moment like they have been recently. So yeah, it's definitely a game that we could win, and I'd love to win it.
Yeah, there'd be a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel if we do manage to get that one over the line. I mean, Jonny, like Billy's kind of said, obviously Chelsea, they're not great at the minute. I mean, we're not great either, but that Southampton game has to be the one that we have to win, because my God, I can't believe if we lose that, then Jesus Christ, I'm going to go bury my head in the sand.
I said the same against Ipswich. I said the same against Leicester. I mean, we played Leicester twice and got 1 point. Um, you know, we rested players for the Ipswich game and lost. Listen, I'm a believer confidence breeds confidence. Very much so. Football's a confidence game. All sports are a confidence game. Whether you're a tennis player, a golfer, suddenly you're not hitting the shots, you're getting the yips. And it's the same with football. When a striker suddenly can't find the back of the net, it's getting inside the heads. Sports psychologist, and we've seen that with Timo Werner, third fastest player in the league, yet there's something mentally has gone on. And right now, I believe that we are in this mental rut where there isn't the belief. I know Slot's team got beaten in the last two games. I think the PSG game absolutely left them on the floor, which is why they had nothing left in the legs against Newcastle on the weekend. But you've seen time and time again where Liverpool look like they're not going to do it, and somehow they find a way, a battling way. And that's mentality. That's about confidence, knowing and believing. And Arsenal have got that as well. We unfortunately don't have that. We're not mental monsters. I'm actually going to that Chelsea game, and unfortunately, I'm a guest, a corporate thing, and I'm not allowed to scream and shout. Which my wife said to me, "How the hell are you going to do that?" I said, "I'm not quite sure," and I've already been warned that I can't say anything. So I don't know how quite that's going to work out for me, but. Knowing how many trips I've made to Stamford Bridge over the years and how many times I've watched us get destroyed, I don't think I'm going to have that moment. I can't see us losing to Southampton in any shape, way or form. But I think people are not realising, I don't believe you can just turn up at Eintracht Frankfurt. I really don't. You need momentum and confidence. And that stems from, like Billy said, you go to Chelsea and somehow you try and maybe get a draw. I mean, we're all expecting to get beat. From small acorns, the big trees grow. And, maybe, we start that and that starts the run. That's the only way you're going to get the fans back on side. Because I'll tell you what, if you lose to Chelsea, no one's going to be patting Ange on the back if we beat Southampton. It's how we react in the rest of those games that's really going to matter. So I go to every game with positive hope. Unfortunately, it's normally in the first 10, 15 minutes. It's all smashed to bits, but we shall see.
I think that's the big thing, like you said, it's momentum. And Jim, kind of alluding to what Billy and Jonny have said in terms of the next three games are kind of massive for us in terms of going into that Europa League game. How do you kind of see those two fixtures and the Frankfurt one going along?
Yeah, the Chelsea one, when you get to this point of a bad string of results, obviously the natural consequence to that is the fan base is going to be far less forgiving on the end result and have a high expectation on the result. And what I mean by that is, if Ange had won his last three games and he goes to Chelsea, but the players work really hard and come out of a narrow defeat, there's forgiveness, right? There's kind of like, we played well, we worked hard, we didn't get it over the line. It's Chelsea, it's always them. How frustrating. Whereas I think you don't kind of earn that level of patience when you're coming off the back of two or three bad performances. So we are going to go into that game with more pressure than ever before, even when there's less to play for, I think, personally. But like others have said just now, if we do pull something off special there, these are the kind of moments that I think can save and buy Ange more time on top of just winning the Europa League. And that it would be going to Chelsea and winning and pulling off the unthinkable, then showing consistency by smashing Southampton 3 or 4-0. And then going into Eintracht won't be easy at all. They have won their last 4 games, I believe, after 4 back-to-back defeats. So typical us timing, they've hit form after a barren run of form just before we play them. So even if we were firing at all cylinders, all players are fit, sat in the top 4 in the Premier League having a great season, I think it would be a hard leg. I don't think it'd be easy. So that game's going to be tough. And I think if he picks up a draw against Chelsea and a convincing win against Southampton, fans would look at the Eintracht game and go, as long as you come out with us still in the tie, I'm starting to give you a little bit more patience and forgiveness here. I'm starting to see there's some progress here. Okay, let's all get behind you in the second leg. Let's all get behind you for the rest of the season and see if you can keep this going. But if we limp out against Chelsea 2 or 3-0 and have a stupid red card, and we get a draw against Southampton and then lose to Eintracht, that's when it gets to a point of there's just no patience left in the fan base for him. And I think that's the point the kind of disillusionment kicks in, which would be frustrating. So obviously I really hope we can, it's up to the players as well, right? This is a moment, if they do believe in Ange, and I really hope they do, because I think Billy, you're on the same page as me, we have this desperate, undying love and want for this to work. Like we've painted the vision in our heads of what it looks like if it would work. And my God, we want to see it happen. But these are the moments where you hear all these things about Ange being this fighter who, against all adversity, stands up at the last moment when everyone writes him off and turns it all around. And though this is the chance, this is an opportunity against Chelsea, I think, to do that. And the difference I think we have versus Arsenal and a Liverpool, which mentioned earlier there, and you look at their results, is I think they've got a consistent leader in their defence that's fit almost every week. And that leadership in that back line sees them through games. When their forward line plays badly, they hold out a clean sheet and they get a 1-0 against a Southampton. Whereas we get a 1-1 draw or a 0-0 and everyone go, or a 1-0 defeat or whatever, and we go, oh my word, how did we not get 3 points there? Whereas a Liverpool and Arsenal, they just have that leadership in that back line to do it. And I do feel a little bit for Ange there, because he probably has built that defence around Romero. And he's just not really been there. And I'm not pinning this on Romero. He's a fantastic player who's, when he plays, I don't buy into he doesn't try. I think he tries really hard, and he's a good leader. But I do think we just kind of left Ange in a difficult spot with the wrong back line going into the season. And maybe that is on Ange as well. Maybe we should have signed and put more focus on that and flagged those issues. But anyway, long story short, get something against Chelsea and beat Southampton. There's a lot more forgiveness in the Europa League suddenly.
I bloody hope so, because I'm getting fed up with this week in, week out. Like I said, it's lovely to go over it and talk it out, because my word, I'd be seething for the rest of the week. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's nice to have those 18 days off to kind of try and chill out. But yeah, we've got a big stack of games coming in as soon as that kind of we'll kick off again, kicking a ball. But you know what? It's
Hollie,
been...
you do really.
Oh, are you there, Jonny?
Well, his phone might have finally got him.
Spurs, you said you're nice relaxing 18 days. It's safe to go back. Shark pops up and bites you on the backside, right? And something's going to happen. One of them's going to get injured, or another concert's going to be arranged, or something that's going to rile us up. So sorry. Yeah, go on, carry on. Beg your pardon.
No, you're spot on. The thing is, I try to ignore Spurs in 18 days because it just drives me nuts when we play. Then we've got a bit of off season, then they drive me up the wall again. So I just kind of try and switch off from it all, which I know is very hard. But yeah, I can't do it anymore. I'm turning grey, and I'm only 27. Like, it's mental, and that's all because of Spurs.
I'm only 27. Look at the state of me.
But it's just the perks of being a Spurs. It's definitely not perks, but you know what, it's great on a Monday to sit it down with new people each week to kind of go over and try and make sense of what's happened on the game just gone. And before we kind of go do our goodbyes around the table, I just want to say a big thank you to Toby as well, that put a super chat in. But me being a melon and not being able to multitask, I do apologise for missing it. So thank you very much for putting that in. I really, really appreciate it. But let's go around the table, say our goodbyes. So first of all, Jim, it was amazing to have you back on the show this evening. Where can everybody find you doing your thing? Thanks,
Hollie. Yeah, mainly on YouTube, Oh So Spurs, also on Twitter as well. I do have created a Blue Sky account. I just need to use it more. But yeah, still say hi to me on there, please. And if you want to write in anything to the show, like questions or anything like that, we've got a website. I'll post it in the comments on here in a minute, and you can check that out and write questions into us on there. Yeah, much love to you all. Opinions aside, let's just hope Spurs can do something against Chelsea, because that would just be be very good.
Yeah, we need to cheer ourselves up, I think. But no, Jim, awesome to have you on. Make sure you go check out Oh So Spurs, everybody that's watching. As well, Billy, it's amazing to have you all back on again this evening. Where can everybody find you? Do your thing.
Yeah, Billie T on Twitter. And last time I was on with Simon, he did this, so I'm going to do it as well. Can I ask you a question now, Hollie?
Oh, go on then.
And I'll ask everyone else as well. I think I already know Johnny's answer to this question. Is there any part of you, now we've got 18 days off, that would get a new manager in right now for the Europa and go all out for the Europa League? Personally, I don't think I would, because I manage till the wheels fall off. But have you thought about that? Because I know it's been a bit of a debate on Twitter.
To me personally, to be honest with you, my brain's just kind of frazzled with the whole situation. I think
that's where I'm at, to be honest. I'm just so done with it all.
Yeah, I think I would for me personally, I think I'd just keep him, because we've been there before where we had Jose at the helm and sacked him 4 days before a final, and that really ticked me off. And I get
18 days, got a clear run.
Yeah, I know. But no, I think it might call me stupid, but I think I'd maybe keep him purely because of what we spoke about tonight, in terms of there's something to play for the players in that kind of Europa League kind of fixtures. So yeah, I might be stupid, but I'd keep him purely for that notion. And if we get knocked out, we get knocked out. Then that's a good enough reason to get him gone.
Billy, didn't Chelsea sack a manager and then go on to win the Champions League?
Are you saying we should hire Roberto Di Matteo? I'll do it. If it wins us the Europa, I'll do it.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's been done before.
Di Matteo which was no. What I'm trying to say here is that they hired Matteo because he was Chelsea. Yeah, he blue blood, right? And what I'm saying is that if we were to do that, I'm not interested in bringing in a Terzic or anyone like that. I'm talking about bringing in. It's never going to happen, but bringing in a Hoddle or a Harry Redknapp for those 5-8 games. You let Matty Wells and Mason do the coaching, and then it's open by Hoddle or someone like Redknapp. For me, that would be the way to go. Because I've got no interest in. Listen, he's broken so many records, this manager, but all of the wrong records. We lost 3 North London derbies on the trot. That hasn't happened since 1989. I mean, there's so many records, and they're tumbling. And with 11 games to go, I don't want to be in a let Ross McGuire in, and we got part of the record breakers. We'll have the Guinness Book of Records in, writing up new records for us. It's enough. The fans have had enough. We deserve some happiness at long last. I don't want to be part of any more memes. I just want to be happy and have a smile on my face for once in a while, like we all do. And I know I'm probably in the minority as far as maybe getting a manager while we've got the 18 days. But the reality is I can't see it happening. I don't know whether Ange has pictures of Daniel Levy, but it's so out of character for him to be keeping a manager when you think about sacking Joel at half-time and sacking Mourinho before a final and so on. He sacked
Poch at the very first sign of trouble as well. Like this first run of bad games, he sacked
exactly. And, it just I'm baffled, like many fans are, as to why this guy is getting so much latitude. He's producing the worst football, worst results for 20 or 25 years.
I mean, without going off on a tangent, I think my only reasoning behind why Ange is still here is purely because, like you guys have alluded to already, Levy's done this before, and the amount of backlash he's got. Maybe he's kind of thinking, not that I know how that man's brain works, but maybe he's thinking if he sacks Ange again before we've got a chance of getting Europa, that's another failure that's on his head. I don't know. I mean, I'm not Daniel Levy by any stretch of the name.
If he does it right at the end of the season, it kind of buys himself a little bit of that fans to buy into that hope of a new manager at the end of the season, rather than turn their attention towards how much of a bad job that he's done, as an owner. The reality is, as soon as you get a new manager, and if you get Iriola in August, fans will be right up for getting behind Areola again, and you kind of forget about what happened last season. It's just the cyclical nature of football is what happens, and I think he's using it as a crux to get out of his own responsibility, in my opinion.
I do think like it's a lose-lose for the board if they move on now, kind of like you're saying, but I think that there's obviously the various camps in our fan base who we're all in the same camp in the middle, but we've got little side camps that we like to sit in for various reasons. And I've got mine, and we've all, I don't know what all of yours guys are, but I feel like if he sacks Ange, it allows more pitchforks out to say, proved it. You can't get this right. Because for a lot of us, this is the last chance for you to show us as a board that you can get this right. We've got the shiny stadium. We're spending money now. You've brought a manager in, you've given him the money, and you still didn't work. So I think if he fails and pulls the trigger on Ange, it's another, it brings more people on against him. Whereas sticking with Ange, maybe there's a little bit of hope there Levy's got as well, saying, if I stick with this guy and he does find a way of turning it around, even if it's in the last 5 games of the season, he goes on a 5-game winning run, I can say I got it right. And the longer I can hold on to this dream of it being right, it's better for me. As well, I say me as Levy. I imagine it's Levy and plus a couple of others in the decision-making process on that front, ultimately. But I think there's more upside there, and even as a fan base, right? I get the idea of bringing in an interim and going for the Europa League, but to me, 6 months feels a hell of a long time in football as a fan, but it's a really short amount of time on the grand schemes of things, and there's potentially the dream which maybe Billy and I have, and Jonny will probably roll his eyes at still believing it at this stage when all the stats have been broken for the wrong reasons. For the sake of another 6 months, for a chance of that dream being fulfilled and a corner being turned, I guess from my side, it's like maybe just hold on and see. And then if we're not there in 6 months and we're 2 or 3 months into next season and it's same excuses, you can't hold on to that dream anymore.
I've got to be honest with you, Jim. I have never known as many people. I know a lot of people who have turned to me and said, that's it. They are giving up their season tickets. They can't take it anymore. They're not going to pay this amount of money to these owners and for this football to pay so much with such little expectation. I don't believe I'm expecting too much, Jim. That's the God's truth, right? I feel my expectations should be in line with how much I'm paying, and I'm paying a fortune my season ticket, and my expectations are greater than where we are right now. And this isn't a knee-jerk reaction. The project. A knee-jerk reaction is someone where you react after 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. But we are well into the second year of this project. It's not getting better. If anything, it's probably worse. And, I just, so many.
Oh. But yeah, I think Jonny makes a fair point, though. Like
what happened there? I lost myself.
You're back.
I just think that if this carries on, a lot of this fan base will be lost, loyal fan base. And, Billy and I, when we go marching in April for Change for Spurs, I believe very strongly with it for change. However that change may be, a change for the better, and what us fans are having to put up with. What do you say, Bill?
Yeah, completely agree. And I think what Jim said is true. We all want the same thing. We all just want a successful football club. And I think certainly for me, I don't believe these owners will ever deliver that. But I would love them to prove me wrong. So if we win that, Europa League, first trophy in 17 years, that's all we want. That is all any fan wants, is just to have a football team that they are proud of. And we've had it a couple of times in recent years under Poch and Redknapp. A couple of spots in between, people like Joel, but it's been a long time, I think, for now that we've had it. So, I just think we want change. We just want a football team that we can be proud of again.
And a football team we can talk about highly and not have therapy sessions every Monday.
We can actually come on after a win will be great.
But no, like I say, it's just a bit of a mess at the moment, the Spurs, and I hope that something does change. And like I say, if you do you feel strongly about change at Spurs? Get along, obviously, to that March.
I tell you what, though,
April.
if we're talking about Sessegnon and the kind of things that history of Tottenham, winning Europa League in our worst ever domestic season would be a very Tottenham thing to do. So,
Yeah. Well, we
100%.
did. The last trophy was one day
So
Ramos.
Spursy.
Similar,
yeah, and he was,
similar thing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you never know.
There you go. Maybe it's the silver lining. The stars are aligning for the wrong reasons, but the right reasons. But hopefully, because like I say, we all want a trophy. We all bloody deserve a trophy. But Johnny, like I say, with the last person we need to come to is say your goodbyes and where to find you, where you do your thing. So
Thanks
far
for
ahead,
having me on, Hollie. You can find me on X, JohnnyH3232, or Talking Tottenham 1882 on Instagram and TikTok, which I've just started again. And you can normally find me once a week at some point on Last Word on Spurs at the moment, and with Dave with Irish Hotspur during the week. But thanks for having me on, and always good to be on with Billie and Jim. And let's hope we have 18 months of peace and solitude, and we come back all fired up with a win. But like I said, Hollie, this is Spurs. Expect the unexpected. Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, I'm going to be stressed for those 18 days. But you know what? I'm just going to try and switch off. I won't, but here's the hoping. But like I say, thank you to all of you for joining me tonight. Thank you to everybody in the chat as well. Big up to Toby that obviously put that super chat out. I really do appreciate it. And like I say, the Hotspur Huddle will be back on Wednesday, where me, Wes and Wes will probably get the tactics board out to show what kind of went wrong with Andrew's tactics. That'd be fun for us all to dissect again.
He must
and
have
then,
the same tactics balled out every week.
to be fair, I did tell Wes to put it
just
away.
leave him in the same place, Hollie. That's all he needs to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did tell Wes a couple of weeks ago to put it away, mate. I don't need to see it again because it is the same thing every week. But he'll have it out on Wednesday to kind of go into what kind of went wrong, and then obviously
The tactics balled, yeah.
That sounds. You can tell it's past 8:00, and I need to go because my words do not come out the right way. But anyway, like I said, Hotspur Huddle on Wednesday, and then there'll be a break from the Hotspur Huddle on Monday because there's no Spurs, thank God. But like I say, make sure you subscribe, go check everybody else's content out. And until next time, how will you Spurs?
Go on.